I'm Jack, 41, and if you'd told me a year ago that my own family would treat me like a walking ATM, I would have laughed it off. But life has a way of showing you exactly who people are once there's money involved. I grew up in a middle-class family. Mom worked as a nurse, Dad was a mechanic, and we never had much, but we had enough. I was the quiet kid, the one who saved up his allowance, fixed old electronics for fun, and learned early that being careful with money wasn't stinginess. It was survival. My younger brother, Adam, was the opposite. He was the dreamer, the idea guy, the one who could charm anyone out of their wallet but never held a job longer than a summer. My parents called him our little genius. Me? I was the responsible one, which, in family code, meant the one who'll bail everyone out. When I was in my late 20s, I moved out, worked my way up in IT, and eventually started a small remote consulting business. It wasn't flashy, but it paid well, and for the first time, I could breathe. Over the years, I saved every extra cent I could. By 40, I had a solid cushion, nothing life-changing, but enough to feel secure. My parents knew I did tech stuff. Adam knew I was comfortable, but none of them knew the exact numbers, and I kept it that way for a reason. Then came the phone call that started everything. It was a Sunday morning. I was having coffee on my balcony, half listening to a podcast when my phone lit up. Adam. I hadn't heard from him in months. I picked up, expecting maybe a casual "what's up?" Instead, he jumped straight into a pitch like some over-caffeinated salesman. "Jack, bro, I finally figured it out. This is it. The big one." I sighed. "The big one. You said that about the food truck. And the crypto thing. And the—" "No, no," he interrupted. "This is different. I've been talking with this guy from LA. He's got connections. We're launching a luxury energy drink. All natural, zero sugar, premium packaging, marketed for athletes. It's going to blow up." I waited. "Okay, and I just need some startup capital. Small stuff, bro, 50 grand, maybe 60 tops. You'll double it in 6 months, easy." I nearly choked on my coffee. $60,000? Adam, that's not small stuff. That's someone's annual salary. Not yours, he said, laughing. "Come on, man, you've been doing that computer thing for years. I know you're loaded." That line hit me like a spark to dry grass. Loaded. As if the years of working weekends, fixing code at 2 a.m., and turning down vacations somehow didn't count. As if money just appeared in my account because I was lucky. "Adam," I said carefully, "I'm not investing in another one of your ideas. You still owe Dad for that restaurant thing." "That wasn't my fault," he shot back. "The city shut it down, remember? They had zoning issues." "You didn't read the permit," I reminded him. "You opened a grill in a space zoned for retail." He groaned, exasperated, as if I was the unreasonable one. "You always got to bring up the past, huh? This is different. I have a plan. I just need someone who believes in me." "Belief doesn't pay suppliers," I said. "Sorry, man. I'm out." There was silence on the other end for a few seconds, and then his tone changed, flat, cold. "Wow. Guess family doesn't mean much to you anymore." I didn't answer. He hung up. For a few days, I didn't think much of it. Then my mom called. "Jack, honey," she began sweetly, too sweetly. "I heard you talk to Adam." "Yeah, briefly." "Well," she sighed, "he's really putting his heart into this business. You know how much potential he has if people would just give him a chance." I rubbed my forehead. "Mom, he's had a dozen chances. This time is different," she insisted. "He's growing up. You could help him get started, and it would mean so much to your father and me." "Mom, I'm not giving him 50 grand. Her voice sharpened. "Why not? You're single, you don't have kids, you can afford it. We've always supported you." I almost laughed. Supported me? I paid for my own college textbooks, my own rent, my own car. When my laptop broke senior year, I sold my bike to buy a used one. Support wasn't exactly their strong suit. "I'm sorry," I said finally, "but no." She went quiet for a moment. Then, softly, "Don't come crying to us when you need help someday." Click. That was the first time my mom ever hung up on me. Over the next week, the calls came in waves. My dad tried the guilt route. "You know your brother's had a tough run, Jack. This could change his life." My aunt texted, "He's your family. Money comes and goes, but blood doesn't." Even my cousin chimed in with, "Bro, 60K is nothing for a successful guy like you." I started ignoring them. Then the messages turned nasty. Adam posted some vague nonsense on Facebook. Some people act rich, but forget who helped them get there. Mom commented a heart emoji. My uncle liked it. I wanted to respond, but I didn't. I've learned that silence burns louder than words sometimes. 2 days later, my dad called again, this time sounding urgent. Jack, your brother's at the bank right now. He says you agreed to co-sign his loan. They just need your confirmation. What? I nearly dropped my phone. No, I didn't. Well, Dad said slowly, he told us you did. You should just help him out, son. You're making this harder than it needs to be. I hung up before I said something I'd regret. My heart was pounding. Co-signing a loan without my consent? That wasn't just irresponsible, it was fraud. I called the bank myself and told them in no uncertain terms, do not approve anything in my name. That evening, I sat in my apartment, staring at my phone, feeling something shift inside me. Not anger, just clarity. I'd spent years trying to be the good son, the dependable one who never caused trouble. But now, it was like the mask had fallen off. They didn't see me as family anymore. They saw me as a resource. The next morning, I checked my accounts, transferred everything to a separate bank, one they didn't know about. Then I booked a flight. One way. I didn't even care where, just somewhere far. I ended up choosing Portugal. I'd never been, but I'd seen photos of the coast, golden cliffs, blue water. Peaceful. As I packed my suitcase, my phone buzzed again. Mom. Then Adam. Then Dad. I turned it face down and zipped the bag. By the time I landed 12 hours later, my inbox was overflowing. Calls, texts, voicemails. I ignored them all. That night, I sat at a small restaurant overlooking the Atlantic, sipping wine and eating grilled fish while the sun melted into the sea. For the first time in years, I felt weightless. And then, just as dessert arrived, my phone lit up with a message that made my stomach drop. It was from Mom. Co-sign his loan or don't bother coming home. I just stared at it, the glow of the screen reflecting in the wine glass. Outside, the waves kept rolling in, steady and endless. Something in me hardened. By midnight, I'd moved every dollar I had, savings, stocks, emergency fund, completely out of reach. My phone buzzed nonstop. 63 missed calls. A new family group chat labeled Family Emergency. That's when I knew they weren't going to stop. They weren't just asking anymore. They were planning something. And I had no idea just how far they'd go next. The next morning, I woke up to a dozen more messages, all variations of the same theme: guilt, manipulation, and a strange, simmering rage hiding under polite phrasing. We just want to talk. You're breaking your mother's heart. You can't just disappear, Jack. And then, from Adam, you'll regret this when I'm rich and you're begging for help. I sat on the balcony of my Airbnb, the ocean whispering against the cliffs below, and realized just how much peace cost me and how cheap they thought it was. I hadn't even been gone 24 hours, and already, the emotional warfare had begun. I didn't reply. I didn't block them either. I just let the notifications pile up, a digital storm that I refused to step into. But silence, in my family, was never neutral. It was provocation. 2 days later, I got an email, not from any of them, but from my landlord back home in Seattle. Hi, Jack. Sorry to bother you, but your brother stopped by the property asking for a copy of your lease and mentioned he was handling your affairs while you were abroad. I didn't give him anything, of course, but I thought you should know. I nearly laughed. Handling my affairs? Adam couldn't handle a calendar reminder, let alone someone else's finances. But it also told me something critical. They weren't just angry. They were plotting. That afternoon, I called a friend of mine, Ethan, a lawyer who'd helped me draft my business contracts years ago. Hypothetically, I said, if a family member tried to impersonate me to access financial or legal information, what could I do? He chuckled. That's not hypothetical, is it? Nope. Keep a paper trail, he said. Save every message, every email. If anyone tries to forge your signature or use your personal data, it's fraud. You're protected. But, Jack, are you sure this is just your brother? Meaning someone's enabling him. Probably your parents. He wasn't wrong. The next few weeks turned into a bizarre routine. I'd wake up in Lisbon, make coffee, go for a walk, and check my phone only once a day, usually to find a new angle of attack waiting for me. One day it was pity. Adam's under so much stress. He just needs someone to believe in him. The next, accusation. You're selfish. You left us to deal with everything. Then guilt. Your father's blood pressure's been through the roof since you left. Hope you're happy. Every time, I closed the messages and stared out at the sea, trying to decide whether I should feel anger or grief. Both hurt the same. But then, things took a darker turn. One morning, I logged into my old bank account, mostly out of curiosity, to find a $5 withdrawal. Not from me. It was small enough not to trigger alerts, but big enough to show someone had access. I called the bank immediately. "Mr. Carter," the representative said, "it looks like someone logged in from a device registered under your old home IP address. Do you share access?" "No. I live alone." They froze the account immediately, but that $5 transaction told me everything I needed to know. Adam or my parents had my old login info, and they were testing the waters. The next day, Mom called again, voice trembling with performative hurt. "Jack, why are you doing this? We're your family." "Mom," I said quietly, "did you or Dad log into my account?" Silence. Then a breath. "Your father just wanted to check that you were okay financially. You didn't answer our calls. We were worried." "By stealing my password?" "Don't use that tone with me," she snapped suddenly. "You've been acting like we're strangers. You ran off like a criminal. We raised you better than this." "I didn't run off," I said. "I left." Same thing. When I didn't respond, she sighed dramatically. "Fine. If you want to abandon your family, go ahead. Just remember who took care of you when you had nothing." That line hit differently now. It wasn't love, it was leverage. Every act of kindness they'd ever given came with an invisible debt, and I was done paying interest on it. The following week, I got a call from a mutual friend back home, Sarah, who'd gone to school with Adam. She sounded hesitant. "Jack, this is awkward, but did you really promise to invest in Adam's business and then ghost him?" I closed my eyes. "He told you that?" "He told everyone that," she said. "He said you bailed on him at the last minute, and now he's drowning because of you. He even showed people fake text messages where it looks like you agreed to wire him money." I felt my jaw tighten. "He forged texts." "Looks like it," she said softly. "He's saying you ruined his life." For the rest of the day, I couldn't focus on anything. The betrayal stung, not because it was surprising, but because it was familiar. Every family dinner, every holiday, every time Adam messed up, there was always someone else to blame, and someone else to clean up the mess. Usually me. By the time I opened social media that night, the rumors had spread. Mutual friends had commented under Adam's posts, some sympathetic, some passive-aggressive. "Wow, can't believe your own brother would do that. Family's supposed to have your back." I didn't reply. I didn't defend myself. But inside, a storm was building. A few days later, Mom called again, this time with a tone I hadn't heard before. Soft, fragile, almost apologetic. "Jack, honey, Adam's in trouble." I said nothing. He took out a short-term loan. The business deal fell through, and now the collectors are calling. He's really struggling. They might seize his car. "His car?" I asked dryly. "You mean the one he bought with my old laptop money?" She ignored the jab. "He's desperate, Jack. Please, if you could just help with this one last thing." "Stop," I said quietly. "Excuse me. Stop asking. Stop pretending it's just a favor. You're asking me to clean up his mess again. I'm done." "Don't speak to me that way," she snapped. "We're a family. We help each other." "You don't help me," I said. "You use me." Her breath caught. Then, with venom, "You've changed." I finally grew up. She hung up again. That night, I sat in my room listening to the rain tap against the window and realized something chilling. I didn't miss them. Not the noise, not the guilt, not even the pretense of family unity. What I missed was the idea of family. The illusion that if I worked hard enough, they'd treat me fairly. A week later, a letter arrived at my Lisbon apartment. No return address, but postmarked from Washington State. Inside was a single page, typed neatly. "Jack, this is your last chance to do the right thing. Adam's loan is in collections, and your name is being dragged through the mud. You can fix this before it gets worse. Family always comes first." No signature, just that chilling sentence. I didn't sleep that night. My brain wouldn't stop spinning. How far would they go? Identity theft? Lies? Public humiliation? I'd spent most of my life avoiding confrontation, but now I realized they counted on that. My silence was their permission. The next day, I decided to check Adam's social media again. His profile picture had changed, him standing next to a rented sports car, wearing sunglasses, captioned, "Don't worry, the empire's still rising." Some people can't stop greatness. Hundreds of likes. Comments cheering him on. And buried near the bottom, one comment from my mom. Proud of you, son. Keep pushing forward. That one hurt more than all the others combined. I knew then that whatever came next wouldn't just be a misunderstanding. It would be war. But before I could even think of a response, my phone rang again. It wasn't Mom this time. It wasn't Adam. It was my bank manager. Mr. Carter, he said cautiously, we received a request this morning to verify your identity for a new joint account application under your name and your brother's. Did you authorize that? My heart stopped. No, I said slowly. I did not. The manager hesitated. We flagged it as suspicious, but it had your personal information. Full address, social security number, signature. My pulse thudded in my ears. My signature? Yes, sir. An exact match. I sat there, frozen, the sound of ocean waves crashing faintly through the open window. They hadn't just tried to guilt me. They were trying to be me. And as I hung up, realization hit me like ice in my chest. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about control. And they were about to learn what happens when the responsible one finally stops playing nice. I didn't answer the next few calls from the bank. My hands were trembling too badly to even hold the phone straight. For most of my life, I thought betrayal was an emotional thing, something that hurt because it came from people you loved. But this was something else entirely. It wasn't just betrayal. It was an ambush, planned, deliberate, and terrifyingly real. That night, I sat by the window in my Lisbon apartment, staring out at the ocean. The waves rolled in, steady and uncaring, and I tried to steady my breathing the same way. Somewhere across the Atlantic, my family, the people who raised me, were trying to steal my identity. It felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life crumble in slow motion. The next morning, I called the bank manager back. Can you send me everything related to that joint account request? I asked. He hesitated. Mr. Carter, are you planning to take legal action? I just need to see it. An hour later, the email came through. The PDF attachment opened with a single click. And there it was, my name, my address, my birth date, all filled out neatly. The signature at the bottom looked identical to mine. But it wasn't. What froze me wasn't just the signature. It was the handwriting above it, in blue ink scanned onto the document. A note written in the margins. Jack approved over the phone. I'll bring the signed copy later. Mom will verify. Mom. I read it 3 times before it sank in. Not only had Adam forged my signature, my mother vouched for it. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at the screen, but at some point, the shock gave way to something colder. I wasn't angry in the way I used to be, shouting, venting, pacing around. This was different. This was the kind of anger that sits behind your ribs like a loaded gun, waiting. I forwarded the document to Ethan, my lawyer friend, with a short message. They used my info. Need to talk. He called within minutes. Jack, I looked at the file. This is serious. Whoever submitted this committed fraud, possibly identity theft, depending on the jurisdiction. The handwriting note helps. It shows intent. Can they actually get in trouble for this? I asked quietly. Oh, definitely. But Jack, are you sure you want to go down that road? We're talking about your family. I let out a breath that wasn't quite a laugh. Family? I think that word expired a while ago. Still, I didn't press charges. Not yet. Something in me needed to understand why. Why would my mom, of all people, cross that line? So I called her. She answered on the 3rd ring, voice brittle but composed. Jack, did you tell the bank I approved a joint account with Adam? There was a pause, just long enough to confirm she was about to lie. Of course not, she said smoothly. I don't know what you're talking about. I have the document, I said. Your name's right there. Another pause. Longer this time. Then she sighed. Your brother's under so much pressure, Jack. He just needed help getting things in order. You weren't responding, and so you pretended I said yes? Her voice hardened. We didn't pretend. We just did what needed to be done. You're his brother. I couldn't even form words for a few seconds. Mom, that's illegal. She scoffed. You always make everything sound so dramatic. You think I don't know you? You would have helped eventually. You just needed a push. My chest felt hollow. I wanted to yell, but the disbelief swallowed my voice. You forged my name, Mom. We didn't forge anything. We just moved things forward. You're so stubborn sometimes. You don't understand what it's like watching your family fall apart. That line, your family, hit me in a way I didn't expect, as if I wasn't even part of it anymore. I hung up without another word. My hands were shaking again, but this time from something sharper than fear. Betrayal wasn't a surprise now, it was confirmation. Every little doubt I'd had about their intentions, every ignored gut feeling, was real. Over the next few days, I went through the motions like a machine. Closed old accounts, froze my credit, changed every password, added two-factor authentication to everything from my email to my tax records. Ethan guided me through most of it, but even he sounded unsettled. "It's not every day you have to lock yourself out of your own family," he said quietly. Meanwhile, the messages kept coming. From Adam, "You ruined everything." From Mom, "You didn't have to embarrass us like that." From Dad, "This isn't how family solves things, Jack." I ignored all of them until a message from an unknown number popped up one morning. It was a photo. Adam, standing in front of my parents' house, holding up a printed document. My signature, again forged. Underneath, he'd written, "Guess we'll do it our way then." I stared at it, pulse hammering in my throat. Our way never involved crime. His apparently did. I called Ethan again. "What happens if they keep doing this?" "Then we escalate," he said. "But Jack, they're getting desperate." "That's a good thing. Desperation leads to mistakes." He was right. A few days later, I found one. A notification pinged my email. "Password reset requested." I hadn't requested it. The account? My old cloud storage, the one I used years ago to back up my business contracts and invoices. I checked the IP log. Same Washington address. For the first time, I didn't panic. I smiled. Because that storage account wasn't empty. I'd kept everything. Old messages, receipts, scanned checks, even notes from the times I'd helped Adam pay off his past debts. Proof that for years, I'd been the one covering his mistakes. Proof that every loan he begged for never came back. And mixed in those folders? Screenshots, bank statements, and every text my parents had sent about this business idea. Every manipulative word, every guilt trip. I made copies. Lots of them. Still, I wanted to see how far they'd go before I decided what to do. I didn't have to wait long. 2 weeks later, my phone buzzed while I was in a cafe. A number I didn't recognize, but local to my hometown. I answered. "Jack Carter," a woman's voice asked. "This is Rachel from Evergreen Financial. We have a few questions regarding your business loan application." My stomach dropped. "Excuse me." "Yes, the application for the startup financing under Carter Innovations. You listed your brother as a co-founder." I nearly dropped my cup. "That's not my company. I never applied for any loan." The woman paused. "Well, your documentation says otherwise. Driver's license, tax ID, even proof of funds, all under your name." I could barely speak. "Send me a copy." When the email came through, I opened it right there in the cafe. My ID, scanned, cropped, and attached to a business proposal filled with buzzwords and fake projections. It even had my digital signature pasted on the last page. They'd done it again. Except this time, they weren't just forging my name. They were using my identity to secure debt. I forwarded it all to Ethan. His reply came within minutes. "Jack, this crosses into felony territory. You need to act now." I sat there for a long time, coffee going cold in front of me. Every part of me wanted to believe there was still a way back, that if I called Mom one more time, or if Adam finally realized how deep he'd gone, something could still be salvaged. But the truth was staring me in the face. They weren't going to stop. That night, I went through my old voicemails. There were dozens I hadn't listened to. Most were noise. But one, from Dad, caught my attention. His voice was low, tired. "Jack, your mother's upset. She said you called her a criminal. You need to apologize. Adam's just trying to make something of himself. You know he looks up to you. Don't make this harder than it has to be." I replayed it 3 times. Not once did he say what they'd done was wrong. Only that my reaction was the problem. That was the moment something inside me shut off. The last bit of hesitation gone. Still, I didn't lash out. I didn't send threats or warnings. I just went quiet. Over the next week, I gathered every piece of evidence I could: digital trails, emails, screenshots, voice messages, forged documents, even metadata timestamps. I backed them up in multiple locations, with passwords and legal notes attached. And while they thought I was sitting quietly overseas, licking my wounds, I was actually preparing something they wouldn't see coming. Then, on a gray Tuesday morning, the final straw arrived. It was a photo sent by my cousin Emily, the only relative who'd quietly stayed in touch with me through the chaos. The picture showed my parents' living room. My mom, Adam, and Dad sitting around a table covered with papers. In the center, a letterhead. My name. My company's logo. The caption from Emily read, "They're planning to sue you for damages. They said you ruined Adam's reputation." I stared at the photo until my vision blurred. My own family was preparing to drag me through the legal system using forged documents and lies. And in that moment, somewhere between heartbreak and disbelief, something inside me changed completely. It wasn't sadness anymore. It wasn't even anger. It was purpose. They wanted war. And for the first time in my life, I was ready to fight back. I didn't cry when I saw that photo. I just sat there for a long time, staring at my laptop screen while the Atlantic wind rattled the windows. The anger had burned itself out days ago. What was left felt heavier, slower. It was the kind of exhaustion that lives in your bones, that makes you wonder if you've wasted your whole life trying to earn love that was never real to begin with. For the next few days, I barely left the apartment. The world outside went on as usual, tourists laughing in cafes, kids playing soccer in the alley below, but inside, I was unraveling. Every part of me wanted to believe it wasn't real, that this was some sick misunderstanding, that my mom hadn't actually sat there in that living room, plotting with Adam, that my dad, who once taught me how to fix a bike chain in the garage, wasn't silently backing it all. But denial doesn't change facts. The lawsuit papers arrived 3 days later. International courier. Neat envelope, no return address. But I knew the handwriting on the sender's line. Mom's looping, elegant script. Inside were photocopies of evidence. Screenshots, messages, most of them doctored. Fake conversations showing me promising to invest in Adam's company. Fake invoices that made it look like I'd accepted payments and backed out last minute. They were accusing me of breach of trust and defamation, claiming I'd sabotaged Adam's reputation by refusing to fund his business after agreeing in writing. The letter ended with one line that made my stomach twist. "We still love you, but you've left us no choice." That was when I broke. I remember sliding down the wall, the papers spilling around me, and just sitting there until the light outside faded. The smell of salt air mixed with printer ink. I wasn't even angry anymore, just hollow. For the next week, I moved through life like a ghost. Ate when I remembered, slept when my body forced me to. I stopped checking my phone, stopped replying to Ethan, stopped opening emails. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their faces around that table. Calm, focused, determined. My own mother forging her son's downfall like it was just another family chore. Then one evening, something small snapped me out of it. A knock on my door. My Airbnb host, an older woman named Clara, holding a small dish of food. She spoke Portuguese softly, but I understood enough to catch the gist. She'd noticed I hadn't left the apartment in days. Said I looked tired. "Eat," she said simply, setting the plate on my counter. "And breathe. The sea is for healing, not hiding." It sounds ridiculous, but that moment grounded me more than anything else had in weeks. Someone who didn't owe me a thing had shown more kindness than the people I'd bled for my whole life. That night, I walked down to the cliffs. The wind was cold, the waves rough, but the noise was cleansing. I watched the horizon until the sun sank completely and whispered to no one in particular, "They're not winning." And for the first time, I meant it. The next morning, I got up early, shaved, cleaned the apartment, and opened my laptop. The lawsuit wasn't real yet. It was a threat dressed up in paperwork. But they wanted me rattled, defensive, desperate to fix things. I wasn't going to give them that. Instead, I spent the next several days in quiet research. I contacted Ethan again, this time calm and deliberate. "I need to know exactly what happens if they try to pursue this." He didn't ask if I was okay. I think he could hear the change in my voice. "They won't get far," he said. "They have no legal ground. But if they keep submitting falsified documents, we'll have evidence of perjury and fraud. You could end this for good." I hesitated. Would that mean pressing charges? Yes, against all of them. I didn't answer right away. The thought of seeing their names in a court filing made my chest tighten, but at the same time, something about it felt peaceful, like I was finally putting the pieces where they belonged. Over the following weeks, I started quietly rebuilding my life. I rented a small long-term apartment near the coast. I found a co-working space and slowly eased back into my consulting work, taking small projects just to keep my brain busy. On the surface, it looked like recovery. But beneath it, every night before bed, I was building something else, a meticulous record. a digital map of everything they'd done. I kept files labeled by date, each folder a quiet bullet, each timestamp a nail in their coffin. But while I was collecting evidence, they weren't sitting still either. One morning, I woke up to over 70 missed calls from an unknown number. Then came the texts. Your father's in the hospital. Answer us, please. My hands went cold. For a few minutes, I actually believed it. I called the hospital in Seattle. No record of my father being admitted anywhere. It was another ploy, another test to see if they could still manipulate me with guilt. They couldn't. Not anymore. But still it hurt. The way they knew exactly which buttons to push, the way they could weaponize love like a loaded gun. That night, I walked along the shore until the sand soaked through my shoes. I watched couples laugh over dinner, saw kids chasing waves, and wondered what it would feel like to have a family that didn't view you as an asset, to just exist without being useful. Then, somewhere between the dark water and the smell of salt, I made a quiet promise to myself. This was the last time they'd ever control me with fear. From that point on, I became deliberate with everything I did. I updated all my business records, moved my consulting LLC entirely offshore, and changed my tax residency. I even got a Portuguese lawyer to review local privacy laws. Turns out, my family couldn't legally access anything I owned here without an international court order. Still, the emotional weight didn't just vanish. Some nights, I'd wake up at 3 a.m. with my chest tight, the ghost of my mother's voice echoing in my head. Family always comes first. I'd stare at the ceiling and think about how twisted that sentence had become, how family meant ownership to them. One night, around that same hour, I finally opened a message from Adam that I'd been ignoring for weeks. It said, "You think you're better than us now? You wouldn't have anything if it weren't for me. I made you cool in high school. I helped you get your first car. You owe me. You've always owed me." I laughed out loud. Not a bitter laugh, just disbelief. Even at rock bottom, he was rewriting history. I typed a reply. Short, calm, final. You're right about one thing. I do owe you. You taught me who not to trust. Then I blocked him. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter than I had in months. It wasn't over, far from it, but something inside me had shifted. I wasn't playing defense anymore. They thought they'd broken me. They didn't realize that the quietest people often rebuild in silence. And when they do, they come back sharper than before. And as I closed my laptop and looked out at the sunrise over the Atlantic, I knew one thing with absolute clarity. The next time my family heard my name, it wouldn't be as their scapegoat. It would be as the man who took everything they tried to steal and turned it into their undoing. The next few months passed in a strange blur of calm and quiet rebuilding. I never made any grand declarations or revenge speeches. There was no point. I just started living better than I ever had before, quietly, efficiently, and without needing anyone's permission. By April, Lisbon finally started to feel like home. I'd found a rhythm again. Early morning walks to the harbor, strong espresso at the cafe near my apartment, then hours of deep work in a co-working space overlooking the river. I was consulting for 3 different companies by then, 2 in Europe, 1 in Canada, and for the first time in years, I wasn't just comfortable financially. I was thriving. When I wasn't working, I started rediscovering things I used to love. Photography, for one. I'd always had a good eye for light and detail, and now, with time and peace on my side, I carried my camera everywhere. I took photos of the sea at dawn, the cobblestone streets after rain, the quiet faces of fishermen coming in at sunrise. I didn't realize it yet, but those photos would end up being a metaphor for what I was doing with my life, capturing beauty in the aftermath of chaos. But success wasn't just emotional, it was tangible. I'd incorporated a new version of my business overseas, built an entirely new client list, and rebranded under a different name, Carter Digital Systems. It was leaner, smarter, and far more protected. Ethan helped me draft contracts that shielded my assets across jurisdictions, and a local accountant helped me navigate Portuguese tax benefits. By summer, I doubled my income from the year before. Still, I didn't tell anyone. Not my family, not even mutual friends back home. I wanted the silence to linger a little longer, to see what they'd do when they thought I'd vanished. Turns out, they didn't handle it well. In late May, Emily, my cousin who had secretly kept me updated, messaged me again. They're saying you're broke, that you had a breakdown and disappeared to avoid debt collectors. I smiled when I read that. It was strange, almost poetic. The same people who tried to destroy my name were now using my absence as a way to explain away their guilt. But their rumor mill was running out of fuel, and soon they'd have a much bigger problem. Because while they'd been telling stories, I'd been building one of my own. Over the previous months, I'd taken all the evidence, every forged document, every threatening message, every fake application, and quietly compiled it into a digital case file. Ethan helped me format it into a 90-page dossier. Carter versus Carter family. Evidence of fraud, defamation, and identity theft. We didn't file it. Not yet. I wanted it ready for the moment I'd need it most. Around that time, something unexpected happened. One of my clients, a mid-sized marketing firm based in Spain, offered me a partnership. They'd been so impressed with my consulting work that they wanted to bring me on as a silent equity partner. It wasn't a huge firm, but it had reach across Europe. They wanted my name, my systems, and my strategies, and in return, I'd get 20% ownership. It was more than validation. It was power. For the first time in my life, I didn't just have money, I had leverage. I could shape decisions, influence projects, and build something that no one could take from me. The day I signed that contract, I took myself to dinner at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the Tagus River. The waiter brought out a small cake with a single candle after hearing it was my birthday week. 42. My phone sat face down beside me, no notifications from anyone back home. And somehow, that emptiness felt right. When I got back to my apartment that night, I checked my email one last time before bed. That's when I saw it. A message from my mom. The subject line, "Enough is enough." I hovered over it for a full minute before opening it. "Jack, we heard you've been living in Europe, acting like none of us exist. Your father's been worried sick. Adam's had a rough year, and you've made everything worse. Whatever you think we did, we were only trying to help. It's time to come home and fix this. You owe your brother a public apology. We're meeting with a lawyer soon, and if you keep avoiding us, we'll have to move forward without your cooperation." Mom. The old me would have frozen. The old me would have spent nights crafting a polite reply, trying to diffuse the tension, trying to make peace. But not this version of me. I didn't respond. I just added it to the evidence folder, one more line in the story of how far they'd fallen. That summer, my life accelerated. Carter Digital expanded rapidly. I brought on 2 part-time analysts, built a small but loyal client base in 3 countries, and started giving online lectures about small business cybersecurity. Ironically, my main talking point was about protecting yourself from people you think you can trust. Each month that passed without contact from my family felt like breathing deeper after years underwater. But the world has a strange sense of timing. Just when things were at their best, a message arrived that stirred everything back up. It was from Emily again. "They found out about your company." My heart skipped. "How?" She followed it up seconds later. "Adam bragged about it at a family barbecue. He said you're doing shady offshore stuff, that you stole ideas from him. Your mom told people you're under investigation." For a moment, I just stared at the screen in disbelief. Then I laughed, quietly at first, then louder, until it echoed off the apartment walls. The sheer audacity was almost impressive. They couldn't ruin me through lies anymore, so they resorted to creating new ones. But what they didn't know was that every word they said could, and would, come back to destroy them. I called Ethan that night. "It's time," I said simply. "Time for what?" "For them to finally see what happens when you push someone too far." He didn't need more context. Within a week, he had the necessary paperwork ready, a formal cease and desist letter, followed by an intent to sue notice citing defamation, fraud, and attempted identity theft. But we didn't send it to them directly. We sent it through an attorney my parents knew, a longtime family friend who handled their wills and property. That way, there'd be no way to spin it as a stranger's attack. It would come from someone they trusted, in black and white legal language they couldn't ignore. When the letters were delivered, I didn't hear anything for days, then weeks, until one morning, Emily messaged me again. "Your mom called an emergency family meeting. Adam's freaking out. Dad's been pacing all day." I didn't respond right away. I was sitting at my desk overlooking the harbor, sunlight spilling across the water. My coffee steamed beside me, emails from clients pinging one after another. For the first time in my life, they were the ones spiraling, and I was the one sitting in peace. That night, as the city lights shimmered below, I realized something simple but profound. Revenge didn't always need to be dramatic. Sometimes, it was just living better, freer, and louder than the people who tried to destroy you. And yet, even as things flourished, I knew deep down the story wasn't over. Because power doesn't just silence your enemies. It makes them desperate. And my family was about to get very desperate. A few days after Emily's message, I woke up to an email notification from Ethan marked urgent. I opened it expecting a legal update, but it wasn't that. It was something bigger. "Jack," he wrote, "I think I found something you'll want to see. Call me." When I called, he sounded half amused, half stunned. "Your brother tried to register a business under your company's name." "What?" "Yeah," he said, typing audibly in the background. "Carter Digital Systems, same name, different jurisdiction. He filed it 2 weeks ago in Washington, with a fake address and your old phone number. Probably to confuse clients or impersonate your firm. He listed himself as co-founder and your mom as a guarantor." For a moment, I was too shocked to speak. They hadn't learned a thing. "Ethan," I said slowly, "if he's pretending to be me, that's actionable, right?" He chuckled darkly. "It's not just actionable, Jack. It's criminal. He's impersonating an international business. You could bury him with this." And that's when the idea started to form. Not a plan built from rage, but from precision. If they wanted to play games with my name, I was going to make sure that name carried weight. That afternoon, I called Miguel, the partner at my Spanish firm. He was a sharp businessman, good instincts, and had once mentioned that he'd been trying to expand operations into North America. "I might have a contact," I told him. "There's a company using our brand illegally in the US. I can make sure we own that territory cleanly, legally, and profitably." Within a week, Carter Digital Systems became a registered multinational. We filed trademarks, obtained copyright protection, and issued a public statement on our new U.S. expansion. The announcement went live online, LinkedIn, business directories, even a small press release written by Miguel's PR team. 2 days later, Adam's fake company was hit with a legal takedown. Every registration he filed was invalidated. But that wasn't the real revenge. The real revenge was what came next. Because once Carter Digital became official, I started getting calls from his old contacts. Apparently, Adam had been using my name to network, pitching himself as my business partner. People had grown suspicious after my official launch. Some even sent me screenshots of messages where he claimed I'd cut him out of the deal. One email stood out. It was from a small investor who had sent Adam a deposit, $12,000, for marketing materials. He wrote, "Jack, I'm not sure what's going on, but I hope you're aware that your brother's been using your name to solicit funds. I've already contacted the authorities." I forwarded everything to Ethan. Within hours, he'd compiled a formal complaint and sent it to the state attorney general's office. Then I waited. While I waited, I focused on growing my company. It was strangely therapeutic, channeling every ounce of my energy into something they couldn't touch. My network expanded rapidly. I hired freelancers, streamlined client onboarding, and landed 2 major contracts with European firms. Each time a payment hit my account, I felt another layer of their control peel away. But the real shift wasn't financial, it was psychological. For the first time in years, I was the one holding the cards. Then, out of nowhere, I got another email from my mom. This one was shorter and far less confident. "We need to talk. Adam's in trouble. Please." I didn't reply, but I did call Emily that night. "What happened?" I asked. She hesitated. "The police came to the house. Something about fraud and false filings. They confiscated Adam's laptop. Your dad's furious. Your mom's blaming you, obviously." Of course she was. Still, I didn't gloat. I didn't post anything or brag. I just let it unfold naturally, like gravity taking over once you've stepped aside. About a week later, another message arrived, this time from an unknown address. "You think this is funny? They're threatening to freeze my accounts. You could have helped me, but you had to be the hero. Congrats, Jack. You won." I didn't even finish reading it. I deleted it and went for a walk by the river instead. That's when I realized how poetic it all was. My revenge wasn't dramatic or explosive. It was quiet, methodical, the kind that leaves no debris. I hadn't shouted. I hadn't retaliated in anger. I'd simply built something honest and let their lies collapse under their own weight. But fate wasn't done yet. A few days later, Miguel called me from Spain, sounding oddly amused. "Jack, you're not going to believe this. We just received a partnership inquiry from a U.S. business calling itself Carter Solutions, LLC. The email was from a woman named Margaret Carter. I felt my stomach tighten. That's my mother. She introduced herself as your mother. Actually, he continued. She said your company has been misrepresenting family interests and that she'd like to negotiate licensing rights. She even mentioned something about wanting to restore the family brand. I could almost picture her writing it, trying to wrap deceit in politeness. Miguel, I said calmly, forward it to me. Don't reply. When I opened the email, I almost laughed. It was written like a formal business letter, full of corporate buzzwords she clearly didn't understand. But what stood out most was the line at the bottom. We're prepared to resolve this privately, as families should. Family. That word again. Their shield and their weapon. That was when I decided how it would end. I spent that evening going through the 90-page dossier Ethan and I had built. Every document, every email, every recorded call was there. All it needed was one final update, their most recent attempt to profit off my company's name. When it was done, I printed it, signed the affidavit, and scanned it back to Ethan with a single message, file it. He didn't ask for confirmation twice. By the following week, official complaints were lodged with the authorities in both Washington State and the EU Intellectual Property Office. My family's fake ventures, fraudulent filings, and financial tampering were all under investigation. And still, I didn't celebrate. I didn't even smile. I just sat in my office by the water, the sun reflecting off the waves, and breathed. Really breathed, for the first time in years. I'd gone from the scapegoat to the architect, from the outcast to the one quietly pulling the strings. And yet, deep down, I knew this was just the setup, the calm before the real reckoning. Because my family had built their entire identity on control. The moment they realized they'd lost it completely, they'd break. And when they did, I'd be ready. When the fallout began, it didn't come all at once. It came in waves, small at first, almost quiet. But each one hit harder than the last. The first call came from Ethan. They've officially opened an investigation, he said. Your brother's name is listed as a respondent in a fraud case. Your mother's as a co-signer on forged documents. And there's talk about possible tax evasion tied to the fake company. I didn't say anything at first. Just sat there, listening to the hum of my laptop and the muffled sounds of the city outside. Jack, he said finally, you did everything by the book. Whatever happens next, it's not on you. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and watched the tide roll in. The sky was streaked with pink and gold, the kind of sunset that looked like closure. The next morning, the messages started. From Mom. How could you do this to your own family? You've humiliated us. They're freezing our accounts. Your father can't even get his pension money right now. You've gone too far. From Dad. You didn't have to make it public. We could have worked this out. You should have just come home. And from Adam, predictably full of venom. You think you're better than us now? You ruined my life. They took my car. My business account's gone. Are you happy? For once, I didn't feel guilt. I felt clarity. For years, they'd weaponized my empathy, used family as a leash to drag me back every time I tried to move forward. But this time, I'd cut it clean. A few weeks later, Emily called. Her voice was soft, careful. Jack, it's chaos here. The house was seized for unpaid taxes. Your parents moved in with Aunt Linda temporarily. Adam's staying with some friend out of town. Everyone's fighting. Your mom's blaming your dad. Your dad's blaming Adam. And Adam's blaming you. Let them, I said quietly. They built the fire. I just stopped holding the matches. Still, part of me wanted to know more. So Emily told me. After the investigation started, everything unraveled. The fake business accounts were frozen. The tax discrepancies surfaced. Then came the audit. Turns out Adam had been funneling what little money he could through fake invoices in my name, thinking no one would ever trace them. They did. My parents' names appeared on several of the documents as verifiers. That was enough to trigger a full financial review. Their credit line was suspended. Their house, partially tied to the business filings, was flagged for investigation. It didn't take long before the community found out. My mom's carefully curated image, the sweet, church-going mother who just wanted her sons to get along, shattered. People stopped visiting. Neighbors whispered. Her bridge club quietly removed her name from the roster. Dad lost most of his savings paying legal fees. Adam tried to blame everything on him, then on technical errors, then on me again. But the paperwork didn't lie. The timestamps, the forged signatures, the emails, they all pointed back to him. Within months, He was ordered to repay the investors he'd scammed under my name. When he couldn't, they took him to civil court. He settled, barely avoiding criminal charges, but his credit and reputation were gone. As for my parents, the state dropped criminal proceedings against them in exchange for cooperation, but the damage was irreversible. They lost the house. Their accounts stayed frozen for months. My mom's health declined under the stress, and my dad, always too proud to admit failure, refused to speak to most of the extended family. I never reached out, not out of cruelty, but because there was nothing left to say. They'd taught me what love with conditions looked like, and I'd finally learned to live without it. One evening, maybe a year later, I got another call from Emily. "You should know," she said. "Your mom wanted to send you a letter. She never did, but she told me to tell you she didn't mean for it to go that far." I sat there in silence for a while, then said, "Tell her I forgive her." Because I did. Forgiveness wasn't about them. It was about me refusing to carry their weight any longer. Life moved on quietly after that. My business flourished. Carter Digital expanded across Europe, then Asia. I hired a small team, bought a house near the coast, and learned Portuguese well enough to joke with the locals at the cafe. Every once in a while, I'd get an email from an old friend back home asking if I'd ever visit. I always said, maybe someday. But deep down, I knew I wouldn't. The last time I heard from Adam was 2 years later. A short message, almost pitiful. "I heard your company's doing well. Good for you. Guess you were always the smart one." No apology. No remorse. Just envy dressed as humility. I didn't reply. That night, I took a walk along the cliffs, the same path I'd walked when I first came here, lost and broken. The sea roared beneath me, endless and untamed. I thought about how far I'd come, not through luck, but through finally choosing myself over people who never would have. I stopped at the edge, the wind tugging at my shirt, and whispered, "You can't lose a family that never loved you unconditionally." For a long moment, I stood there in the fading light, the waves crashing below. Then I smiled, small, genuine, unburdened. They had taken everything they could from me. But what they could never touch was the peace that comes when you stop needing people to see your worth. And as the sun disappeared over the Atlantic, I walked back home. No guilt, no noise, no ghosts. Just freedom.